What I love about being here is we've partnered with Singularity for a long time. And what we find is this collection of exponentials, the change that's upon us is truly staggering and singular. And if you look at, in just the technology realm, the amount of change that's happening in such a condensed period of time makes this a unique time. And we see that going on many different dimensions. And what I'm going to use is our technology trends research. Oh, I had a prop and they took it so we have our research that we publish every year that actually features things that are happening in the next 18 to 24 months. I like to call it the Horizon 1.5, which is really for large companies, large government agencies, the things that we think you should be looking at now, and if not investing in, at least having a deliberate approach of why not, and being eyes wide open about it. And since we've done it for 8 years now, we've seen a convergence from the things that we were tracking as exponentials 5, 6 years ago, or actually actual trends now that we're saying that have that tighter horizon and the impact coming. So we're going to focus a bit on the tech trends. I'll set them up. But then it's really about how they're being applied to real enterprise and to real government. We're going to spend most of the time on that. The theme this year is the kinetic enterprise. That's the theme of the report. And the kinetic bit, I'm a computer engineer. I married an English major. And so this is a little bit of her inspiration. 2 meanings of the kinetic part of the title. The first is just a bit of homage to the pace of change. And you could almost call it the frenetic enterprise of just how much is changing and changing so quickly. The other piece is, from physics, the shift from potential to kinetic energy. And I think everything we're talking about as we get inspired and seeing a massive amount of potential and change around us is incredible. And certainly it's enough to spend 2 days to get comfortable with the what of all these different applied sciences and technology advances. But the piece that we have to shift to is the so what of how do we apply it in our industry, in our organization, in our agency, in our lives, in our society, and then quickly get to the now what of how do we actually confidently take action and try to actually create that future that we can imagine. So the second piece of this kinetic energy is saying, fine to be inspired, great to imagine, potential energy, but let's move it to overcoming momentum, actually having impactful force, overcoming inertia, and actually getting to kinetic energy. So excuse me for my little trite play on words between the two, but I liked it as a good way to kind of sum up where we are. And I think as we think the last 2 days, the same challenge is there, and how we've partnered with Singularity is actually saying, if we believe in this broad change that's happening, the potential, the impact, the innovation, and potential disruption, then how do we get the mooring line to today? How do we imagine tomorrow but get there from today? And what the technology trends are trying to do is be a bit more grounded in the things that we see, real business impact, real government impact from now. So the ones that we've hit that I won't cover as much. Blockchain, we've talked about. Blockchain, very interesting from the protocol of trust and how that's affecting not just financial services, but life sciences for medical records, for manufacturing, for tracking supply chain, and food quality and safety, or in pharma and life sciences, the verification and validation process across with partners of contractors and manufacturers and down the network. Very interesting one, very important. The one thing to take away from it is it's real, it's happening, and how do we get in front of it now? We hit a lot on AI and robotics. So if you go, blockchain was in the middle on the right side. On the left side was machine intelligence, was our way to actually put a wrapper around the more immediate pieces of artificial intelligence and robotics, and focusing on cognitive analytics, focusing on bots, and how they're being applied to business today. I know we spent a good bit of time on it. Our two that are specifically about the changing role of the IT organization within your organizations. So the IT department, who here actually would classify themselves in and around IT? CIO, CTO, within a technology shop. Interesting. So maybe a quarter of the room. Business side? Okay. I'm interested in those who didn't say either one. That'd be a fun matching exercise between the two. You know, we have this historical bias of information technology and the spend that we have within the CIO shop is being so focused on operational efficiency and cost containment. And that's well deserved over the years. That's been a big part of the focus. What we see with this collection of exponential technologies and the trends before us, we know that if anything, everything around us is being influenced by these technologies. Every company is a technology company. I fundamentally believe that. When I say that, I don't mean every company is moving to be completely digitized and every physical manifestation of what we do goes away. What I mean by that is you can't separate your business strategy and your broader business model and ambitions or your service mission within an agency from the technology that's driving real change. From customer engagement, from within the core of how work gets done in finance and operations, in the supply chain. And then as we think about the new products and services, the business model, the offerings that are evolving, it's being absolutely informed by technology. And who better than the IT department to actually have a lens of how to figure out what matters, how to vet it, how to make it real, how to drive, and how to deliver it. But most IT shops aren't prepared to do that. So the IT unbounded trend is saying, how do we learn from what high-tech companies and startups have done, of adopting a rapid pace of iteration innovation, but recognizing that we have real considerations within big enterprises, big companies. We can't go as fast as someone that has a zero footprint of legacy technology. We have to be able to balance this need for speed with this idea of how do we keep the illities that are a big part of what we have to do when we think about critical business operations. When I say the illities, I mean security and reliability and scalability and maintainability and capacity planning and performance management, all those things that are really important. So this combination of how do we go faster, how do we do that and make it real. And in what we found in our research is actually adopting some of the broader exponential trends around open innovation, crowdsourcing. How do we actually tap into a broad talent model and how we actually tap into a broad investment model to be able to do that and make it real. The other side of it is inevitable architecture. We almost call this startup architecture. This is basically a combination of cloud and virtualization and containerization and autonomics and automation. How do we actually run the lowest level of the technology footprint that we need to make these things real? And what we see is in high-tech companies and startup, the only stack that they have is the stack informed by open technologies, cloud first, if not cloud only, loosely coupled, fault expectant, a lot of things that we've called out as underlying technology issues. The point isn't the individual pieces, it's that they roll up together and say it's a fundamental different way to approach the underlying infrastructure of how you run your solution stack. And what's inevitable about it is every organization I meet with across every industry and every geography, this is the end state we're moving toward. There's a lot of waste in how we've had to invest in the underlying technology that runs our businesses that isn't value added. And there's a massive opportunity to drive a modernization of infrastructure, of platform, of architecture, which will give you some immediate costs and savings, but it also sets up a foundation for innovation and growth. So it's a huge piece. One other one that we haven't talked about yet is dark analytics. Dark analytics is looking at new and different types of data, specifically unstructured, non-traditional data sources, like image and audio and video. And how do we bring those into how we deal with data, how do we capture information, how do we do something with it, have insights and impact with analytics behind it. So an example, an industrial products company is actually saying, what is the sound of failure? It was great that we actually heard the Media Lab and heard the bog. What's the sound of impending failure of a turbine or of a sorting machine? My grandfather was a fantastic mechanic. His most essential tool he used to triage was listening. He would listen to the engine, and with uncanny ability, and I did not inherit this from him, he would know exactly what was wrong with the car. It could go in, and we're seeing the same type of analysis is possible now. It wasn't possible before. In this dark analytics is also a bit of a call out to the deep web and the dark web. So the first piece of non-traditional unstructured data and what we can do with it now because of advanced techniques is really important. The second piece is the deep web exists and there's immediate opportunity to take advantage of it. Sources that you might not know that are there that can actually drive understanding of your business, your financial performance, the market that you're in. So how do you tap into it? The last one on here, and I want to get to the main point, which is how these come together, is everything as a service. When I meet with my client executives and they see Deloitte's global CTO coming in to talk about technology trends, they expect a shiny object parade. And part of the things we have to talk about are what's coming next. Everything as a service is specifically about how do you modernize your core legacy systems. And so I sometimes talk about technical debt, the things that hold us back because of the decades of investments that we've made and the complexity that represents for us able to actually deliver on the potential and promise of what we're seeing of all of these technologies representing. How do we get our systems ready to participate in this open, digital, rapidly advancing world? And it's something that's hard to justify as a standalone investment, but is absolutely critical. Every survey I do, every group I meet with, this is one of the biggest things holding back. Does anyone use technical debt in your organizations? Is that a term that's familiar with anyone? DEBT? A few hands coming up. It's a way to actually measure the complexity of the existing investments that we've put in place and we maybe haven't maintained or kept up the standard over time that actually hold us back and slow us down. And when people think technical debt, they typically think the first bucket, which is malfeasance, I call it. Malfeasance is bad developers and bad architects and maybe bad consultants that implemented shoddy systems and solutions. Very small percentage of technical debt, and that's not just a self-serving discussion. Very small is malfeasance, truly. Vast majority is the second category, which is misfeasance. Decisions that were made perfectly justified at the time, where we promised ourselves we'd come back and fix it and change it and update it and maintain it, and we didn't, for perfectly good business reasons, but it hasn't aged well, and it's actually we're collecting interest on the decision that was made. And the third one's nonfeasance, where it was exactly the right thing to do when we did it. It just hasn't aged well at all. And so those three categories, how do we actually make sense of how that's holding us back, put it in business terms, and actually take action against it? So the beauty of doing this for 8 years, this is an eye chart. I promise you we won't be trying to drain this, but this is 8 years of research, and it's actually categorized by broader buckets. And if you can look on the top left, it's digital. On the top middle, it's analytics. On the top right, it's cyber, which is my shorthand for security and privacy and regulatory compliance. On the bottom left is the business of IT, which is that infrastructure layer you need to have, plus the role of the IT department around it. Cloud is the bottom middle, and then on the bottom right is this core and core modernization story. And what's great is from 8 years of research, I mentioned up front, there's convergence from things that we were talking about as exponentials that we now see as core trends, and real investment and real value being generated within businesses. The other thing is you see the evolution of topics over the years. So I was the global leader of Deloitte Digital. We launched it 5 years ago. At the time when we launched it, the analysts, many clients, the media, they said, why would Deloitte, as you launch a digital business, why would you keep the heritage of the Deloitte brand when that doesn't actually reinforce this agency creative hyper-digital model? Isn't that a big miss? And we said no at the time. Digital, even though the initial focus was mobile and social and web, we always saw it as this driver of broader business model transformation and hitting all of our core operations or core business. And you see the digital trends kind of moving past the early focus on the device and into those really powerful transformational opportunities in it. You see in the top right, cyber, security, and privacy, we treated it separately at the beginning for years as a separate standalone topic. And then about 4 years ago, we embedded it into treating it every trend. So every chapter of tech trends, it actually has a cyber implication that's now become a risk implication. Because you can't separate how we think about what these things might do, tech trends and broader exponentials, without having an upfront discussion about security and privacy and regulatory and compliance, and now ethics and morality. What does it mean as we adopt? And just because we can, should we? And how do we manage that for the good of not just the company, but our employees and the broader social political climate around us? So I really like this idea of cyber not being a step in a process and a decision flow that's going to put the no in innovation. It's something that's a core discipline you have to have as you do ideation all the way through execution. So this is a good view across, but it really comes to life with some examples. So the first one's aerospace and defense. And in this particular story, it's around wire harness assembly. So for helicopter manufacturing, the step of doing wire harness, so all of the underlying harness that's driving the electronics and controls of the helicopter, it's about 100,000 steps, highly manual, highly complex. And up until 6 months ago, it was driven by actual binders that had paper-based instructions for all 100,000 steps. And the only tracking of work progress was basically seeing where the bookmark would evolve day to day, and then when it was done, being able to test quality at the end of the process. So the company actually started using mixed reality, which is augmented reality plus IoT, to have a real-time job aid being presented out and showing exactly what step had to be done step by step. So it's being augmented, something you can look at and see as you're working, hands-free, heads up, give you the instructions step by step. So gone was the paper-based process. You had the steps that were being overlaid as you did work. If you were confused or ran into trouble, it had an issue, you could either initiate a video or further instructions or drill down to triage and help you resolve the step, or you could actually get help coming to you in real time. You could actually track individual worker performance. So the beauty of this is now I know exactly how Bill Briggs is doing step by step by step, and how he is varying from the mean of what everyone else is doing on a given step, and tracking on if I have problems with a set of procedures or a specific procedure, I can actually say what's some specific training I need to give to have that individual be able to do it at average or better, or I can start reconfiguring the work process to not have Bill Briggs, who's incompetent in this step, have to do that step and break down the work in a way I couldn't do before. That's the most exciting piece, because they started applying machine learning and Six Sigma behind the tracking they could get on progress. They start personalizing the build schedule for every individual, for every step, and start doing different sequencing of orders and different allocations and assignments of work. And what they found is in the first week of doing this, so this isn't after a year of people getting used to it and actually hitting their stride. This is within the first week of doing it. They had 50% improvement in operational efficiency, throughput on the line, and 40% improvement on first-time quality. It's astounding. And they're evolving it beyond into the factory, manufacturing, and distribution of the entire enterprise. So it's a mix of mixed reality. It's a mix of artificial intelligence, what we call machine intelligence. And they had deep integration back into their core manufacturing system so that everything as a service was a way they actually drove a digitization of a work process they never could before. Real and immediate, happening today, in production, live. The middle one, an insurance company. This is actually started within the IT shop. And the CIO of one of the biggest insurance companies in the US said, I need to apply these techniques within my own shop. I believe in the exponential potential of what it means to the business at large, but before I can get there, I need to apply them inside the way I'm running IT. And it was a combination of, I'm investing in upgrading my platform and infrastructure. So basically, there's a term we sometimes use called, infrastructure as code or everything as a service. He virtualized and containerized all of his underlying storage arrays and servers and network, and was able to get to a point where they could script and automate a big piece of what their IT operations staff has to do. And then they started deploying RPA with cognitive machine learning behind it to take on advanced steps, not the simple lowest level, recycle a server or go and patch a given switch. Some higher order, level 2 type support activities across their network engineering, software engineering, and system administration groups. And what they found is with a small number of cobots, they call them cobots because it's an augmented team that works with their own operations side. Within a month, they had 200,000 incidents that were automatically resolved that would have taken 3 or 4 hours per incident. And they were able to elevate and do root cause analysis and actually do some higher order system resolution on many things because the machine learning was identifying patterns and recommending pragmatic action. They're almost to the point where they're going to automate the response curve of getting the feedback into doing the root cause, into closing the root cause. But they still have that extra step of validation right now. Funny enough, the most critical thing that they had to get by was the cultural and change aspect of it. So they have set up their own HR policies for this virtual workforce. And this is, as we talk about the broader implication and job removal and the challenge it might represent, the thing that we haven't focused on is how do we evolve and elevate the people that hopefully aren't doing the repetitive rote tasks, and then how do we deal with a workforce that has a continued need for collaboration amongst all the players. An increasing number of the players are virtual. So they have policies for hiring and firing and promoting their virtual agents. They have policies for performance management, doing job reviews of the individual virtual agents and how they're working and how they're doing. And they've created a brand new management path that's basically the folks that were doing the operation support before are now managing the call-outs, and they're expanding it into loan origination, underwriting, billing administration, and the like. So things you'd expect. Again, these are tech trends, things happening now, but the potential is tremendous. And I love the idea of the IT department actually making it real and proving it out before they move it to the business at large. The last one is in banking, and truly this is the biggest credit card company that has a retail bank presence in the US and a bit of the UK. And what they've done, their CEO has said, our entire company is not only a technology company, our entire future of financial services in our belief is basically digital engagement and real-time analytics and machine learning being embedded in everything that we do. So it's a CEO level mandate to say, how do we have to change everything about our products and solutions, our bank experience in the branch, our customer experience, even who our customers are, how we reach out to them, full stop, period. And to do that, they said, we believe that if that's our core future, we need to have a world-class technology capability, not an information technology group. We need to create a technology capability that basically is on par with the software engineering of the leading internet giants and high-tech giants. We need to have more artificial intelligence and machine learning resources than Baidu. We need to be able to outclass Google and Amazon in software engineering. And so they created a mandate of changes that their IT department took on, which it took 3 or 4 years, but absolutely transformational, including a rebranding of the entire team, basically elevating it to be name of the bank technology, driving innovation, research, product development, massive acquisitions for talent, massive acquisitions for stacks of technology that they didn't have, and the change has been tremendous. Features they can roll out now in weeks. We saw the digital butlers that might be on a short circuit, not very relevant in the next 5 years, but they're relevant right now. Being able to do banking through voice-driven assistance, being able to do real-time analytics that before you leave a restaurant, if someone's added a 0 on your tip, you're getting an alert within 1 or 2 seconds as it's being processed because it's out of the pattern of your typical tipping cycle. I know that would be an easy one from the tech for me and say, something's happened, can you resolve it immediately? You get a text on your phone, and if they see you geotagged, if you want to give them access to be able to have that level of control, they'll actually call you before you leave to make sure you can get it resolved. It's a lot easier to do it then. So really fascinating things as they move the future of their business, but behind it, it said we need a fundamental different approach to everything we've thought about how we not only buy, but how we deliver technology stack behind it. So all of these require a combination of the trends. And I think beyond the individual topics, which are interesting, is how do we bring them together, put them in a business lens, and then decide that now what? How do we confidently take action, knowing that only a percentage of the things we're going to go after are going to have surety of outcome. We have a broad stroke way to think about a portfolio of the types of things you're taking on. And there's 10%, which is truly disruptive innovation. Much of the focus this last 2 days is on the disruptive. How do we truly reimagine industry and business and how we work and how we live within society? That 10% is going to have the least amount of surety and confidence in ROI and payback. And it's certainly going to be measured in a different way than we're typically comfortable with. 20% around adjacencies that we have a little bit more idea of what the so what will be. But it's a bold play, and we need to be able to make a bit of it. But 70% of those investments should be around core extensions, things that have incremental certainty around what we mean, how we're going to get value out of it. And it's the 70% will have the smallest potential payback likely, the 10% will have the highest potential payback, but the probability of success is going to actually be much higher the closer we get. And so in that, it's how do we actually take action? How do we do something with this innovation? Disruption forces are real. We walk out of here tonight inspired by everything that's changing around us, maybe frightened by everything that's changing around us. How do we make this real? How do we go back, and how do we respond? And there's a continuum of things that we've seen our clients do. On the left-hand side, the simplest is a sensing and research, and most of the time it's not doing it yourself. It's partnering with someone like Singularity, partnering with someone like a Deloitte, partnering with a research analyst firm, participating with an incubator, finding a way to get a broader lens of what's happening that you couldn't have yourself. Great quote from back in the days of Sun Microsystems' earliest days. No matter who you are, there's more smart people that don't work for you than do. How do you harness and tap that to see what's coming? The explore and experiment, incubate and scale becomes the harder part. And how do you have a foundry or a factory model for driving the sensing, getting to vetting, and doing enough experimentation to drive proof points and making it real? The problem with these different topics that we've been focused on is if you just do a tell, it's hard to get inspired by them. A lot of what you've seen here is a lot of show, which is important in the boardroom for your business executives, for your team is bring it back and make it real. The best way to show is have it real within the context of your own organization. So can we do a Foundry model that lets us rapidly iterate through, measure it in weeks to decide if it's relevant or not, and then get to the right-hand side, which is how do we then bring it back in, create a business case to scale, and scale. Or if it's something truly disruptive, we don't think it can live within the organizational confines, because the institutional antibodies are very great at killing anything that's truly disruptive within any firm, including my own, then maybe it's how do we create a new co outside of the boundaries of the organization and allow it to scale without the overhead and the burden of what it would be if we tried to do it within. So John Hagel is a colleague of mine, and there's a great bit of research about how do we scale on the edge, the edge of innovation, which is exactly that point. Now, out of all of it, to me, the topics we've been focused on, they're real. They're happening now. The potential is tremendous. But innovation is work. Peter Drucker said that years and years and years ago. We can have an industrialized discipline approach to get through the what and not be overwhelmed by it, to get to the so what, to be able to get to a point where we can actually communicate value and build confidence in making some investments. Probably most importantly, get to the now what, to make it real and drive it through. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the day. Appreciate the time.